All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here tonight for Murder and Margaritas. My name is Ashley Bryan. I am the youth and school joining us tonight, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder that if you have not picked up a copy of either book, I am putting the link to our event page in the chat so that you're able to access that quickly. Also, please understand that we are a safe space and our code of conduct applies online as well as in person. And if you have any questions when we get to the Q&A at the end, please type it in the chat that should be located to the right of your screen. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to you, ladies. And cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're basically just going to have a very informal conversation, two cozy mystery authors, and I wanted to bring in Victoria for this interview or this conversation because we have some commonalities. We're both based in North Carolina. We both write cozy mysteries, and I feel like I know her. We have never met in person, but we've had so much screen time this year that I feel like I know you. So like we're friends.
We've done several events.
Yeah, we did one Saturday in Winchester, Virginia, which leads me to my first question. So I know from past conversations that you are originally from Loudoun, Virginia. Is that, I mean, Loudoun County, is that Winchester? I feel like I saw that.
No, Winchester is over the mountain from Loudoun County.
Okay.
It's, I have lived in Winchester. But
really, did you enjoy it? Because when I went there, I felt like I want to stay there.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful town. I liked it a lot. But Loudoun County is just over the mountain, and I grew up there. My mother was a native of that area, and my grandparents had a farm. I actually grew up in a very small town called Lovettsville, and it was a farming community at the time. Now it's more of a bedroom community for DC because there's trains that go into DC. So that's changed a lot. But I did grow up in a rural area, but I've lived in New York City too, so I've been all over the place. And, but I drew on that Loudoun County experience to create the Blue Ridge Library Mysteries series. That was my first series that's still continuing.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Since you have that background, how did that influence the setting? And also having read, I haven't completed the series, but I know that they go to New York at some point.
They do at one point,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So tell me a little bit about how your travels and the places that you've been kind of influence you in your stories.
Well, the town in the Blue Ridge series, and I'll show you, the first book is called A Murder for the Books. And,
very good. Very good.
There's 4 of them out now. There's a 5th one coming out in December. And there will be 6 and 7, so it's continuing. But the town is fictional, but it's based very heavily on the towns that I knew growing up, the town I grew up in, plus a few others mixed in. So I kind of mixed them together a little bit. And as far as going to New York, well, one of my characters is a contemporary dancer and happens to be a guy. He's a love interest too, so it's a little different.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
love interest as a guy. As a dancer.
At one point, they go to New York, and I tried to pull in some of my remembrances of New York because I lived there for about 5.5 years, some time ago. And then Book for Death, which is the one that comes out in August, set in North Carolina, is set in a real place, which many people probably know, is Beaufort, North Carolina. And I chose that because I wanted this place I'd been to quite a bit and something I could really, remember and know. So I was not just looking at stuff on Google, but that I had walked the streets of that town, and I know that town pretty well. So, and I think you had said that your experiences were based on living all these different places too, and also living near the seashore for your book.
Right. My husband was a former Marine, so we were based in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is on the coast near Wilmington. And so I've spent a lot of time between like Emerald Isle and Wilmington, which is this really nice area of the beach, and also close to like New Bern and Beaufort and those areas. And I always knew that I wanted to do a story that was set on the beach. And this one in particular is perfect because it deals with women that are descendant from mermaids and are water witches. They have powers that comes from the water. So they absolutely have to live, on the coast. So I kind of took there's a town that actually, it's called Washington. It's on the Pamlico Sound. And I went there for a conference a while back. And it was such a beautiful, like, little town with this great historic district, this like waterfront. And when I think about Bellamy Bay, which is at the town in the book, I think about Washington, like picking up that town and then moving it to where near Steed's Ferry, actually, is like the location. But yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I know we've talked, and I know that you were a librarian, which love librarians. That's that was like a dream job. Like that was on my list of things to do. Is like, do I want to get my MLS and become a librarian? But so I think, and I love that your Cozy, the first one, is it's in the library world. It's like a little small library, and the librarian that gets to use all of her skills. And I think you really show how her being a sleuth is like a perfect fit for her as a librarian. She's always using her research skills. Right. Talk a little bit about how her being a librarian works for her as a sleuth.
Well, I worked as a librarian for over 30 years. I actually was the director of the library at School of the Arts in Winston-Salem. So,
oh, wow.
And that was my long-term job. So I have an arts background. The reason that job was so perfect for me was because I actually have a theater degree, undergraduate degree. And I was primarily working in design and costume design, but I studied all kinds of theater and music and art. And so when it came to writing the book, it was fun to bring in the library information that, even though I've not worked in a small public library like Amy does, my main character, but it's still the same. There's the skills that you learn, the way that you search the internet even. I mean, you use the internet, you use online sources, you use databases, but the way that librarians sometimes go about it is a little different, perhaps, than just the public. So I tried to bring that in and explain a little bit about what real library research is like and why Amy can help the police. And that's one of the big things I like my sleuths to be working with the police or the sheriff's office and not fighting against them or butting into their business. So Amy actually works with a sheriff's deputy who's learned about her research skills. So that's a sort of perfect segue into getting her involved in the crime in a way that feels reasonable to me.
Right. And I love the library as the setting because it's almost like the community center. Yeah. It was like that for me growing up. So it's very nostalgic to see that. And I'm a bookish person, obviously. So I really, really love the library setting. But as you tell me some things about your past, like the book makes sense. Like the fact that you were at the School of the Arts, there's a lot of like arts and theater and like actual art, like visual art and drama and dancing. So I could see like the elements of you in the book. It's not just like a book theme. There's a lot of like performing arts and dance. And so let's talk about how you don't have the stereotypical detective, sexy detective, even though there is a cute detective, right? Or there is a cute sheriff.
There is a sheriff, but he's a friend. He's not the love interest of that protagonist. But I worked with so many different artists and dancers and performing artists over the years. And the thing that I learned was that they were just as varied as everybody else. And there's a lot of stereotypes about, what a dancer would be, what a male dancer would be. And so I just thought it would be fun to bring that in. And my male dancer is a choreographer as well, and so he's creating dances. And just the idea that, here's a guy who a lot of people would look at him and say, oh, he's not going to be the manly man kind of thing, but he is. And, he's a very sweet guy, but he has a lot of strength, and he's a very, he gets involved in the investigations too to help Amy. So, that was fun. And the art part, I have a character who is an art collector and sells art, and he's a really mysterious character, and he's one of my favorite characters. And
so I can't tell if the art stuff. I can't tell if it's good or bad, and I think that's by design. Like, I can't tell. I don't know. Like, I'm confused about his motivations and intentions.
Actually, because he is a great character. He's got a murky
very
background.
Complex.
Yeah. And I think you said that, in your books now with characters, like a lot of your experience with Polish culture and family that you've met and known, and you really brought that in, which I think is really exciting too, because it's different. It's not something you get to see all the time, especially in cozies.
Yeah, my husband is from Poland and came to the States when he was 14. So of course, when I married him, or even before I married him, became very close with his family, and I'm a very kind of inquisitive person. So as soon as I knew where he was from, like I never knew anything about Poland before I met him. Like, Italy and Greece and of course, I've been to those places, and I was like, "Where are you from?" And he told me, and then I researched, like I learned like all the history, the geography, and the culture and everything. And when his parents were in the States, at one point we lived in Long Island, New York. His parents were in New Jersey, which is where he lived the whole time he was here in this community called Linden, which is like a Polish community. And I spent a lot of time with his parents, and they're just this really warm, gracious people. And she's always kind of like a stereotypical good mother-in-law who's always like cooking. She cooks a lot of food, cooks from scratch. And at this particular time, I was pregnant, so maybe that has something to do with. I don't think so, because even when I'm not pregnant, she still cooks. But everything, like these wonderful pastries, like Polish pastries that I've never even heard of, they're like so good. And we would sit over and have tea with herbata in Polish, and just or vodka if it's depending, and just eat and drink and talk and just have a really wonderful time. And even when I went to Poland this past year, which is the first time I went, I was really overwhelmed by like the hospitality. We visited a lot of his family, and it was the exact same thing, which is very welcoming. Like, are you hungry? Here, it doesn't matter if you're hungry. Here's cake, here's coffee, and just talking. And I really wanted to put that into a story. And so when I was thinking about an idea, something new and fresh for a cozy that I hadn't seen, I knew that I wanted to incorporate that. So that's why
that really comes across in your book. I think that the culture, the personalities of the characters, and the food and all that really warm, sort of welcoming aspect of it, that they welcome the protagonist, so who's family but still hasn't seen them in a long time, and so it's really
Yeah, she was estranged for reasons she didn't really understand, and they immediately brought her in, and I feel like that's what would happen. They would just immediately bring a person into the family like they've always been there. So yeah, that's definitely incorporated in there. Let's see. So I want to talk a little bit, we've already talked about it, but the dancer, like you said, I just want to give my thoughts on that, because I love like the sexy cop, as like, that's kind of, and I've read, it's a cliche. It's a cliche in cozy mysteries, but I enjoy it. Yeah. And I remember when I first read yours, and I was like, he's a dancer. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not. Is he going to be manly and sexy? And he is.
Yeah,
I like it. I didn't think I was going to like it, because it's like he needs to be like a veteran or like a cop, or you know what I mean? And that's usually what I will have in mind. But it works, and I like it. totally makes sense with your background. But I like the way that Amy makes a point of like highlighting his artistic like nature, or like his body, the muscles that come from dancing, and he's very masculine and he's very attractive. So it's like with the Polish culture is a different thing. It's a different kind of character, and it's refreshing because, you know, I love cozy. Sometimes it can be a little formulaic. So if you can find a way to make it a little different, I think that's cool. So I like that.
Yeah. He's my book boyfriend, sort of, I guess, you know, I mean, that I've made, you know.
Right.
But, now in Book for Death, I don't really have a romance in the first book, and there's a good reason for that, and that is that my main character, she's 42, she's a widow, and she's a young widow, you know, and her husband died tragically, and she was very much in love with him. Yeah, and so
I'm not gonna say what happens, like how he's hurt. It's a horrible story. I was like, oh my god,
he's a hero though. He's a hero.
I mean, it's horrible but heroic. Like, I hope that.
So I didn't feel like she should have in the first book anyway. I mean, as books go along, I think, you know, things can happen with somebody else. But it just felt like to me that, you know, someone who really loved their spouse that much, and you know, they weren't going to be jumping right into something.
Yeah, so I think that it should happen organically, and I don't think that like in a cozy mystery I don't think you have to have a love interest, and you don't have to have it immediately. You know, I think it's okay to like set up the character and their world and just let the reader get to know them, because in real life, people don't always have a mate. They don't always dating somebody. So I think, especially with her background, she's still like grieving. Mm-hmm. So I thought it worked well. And again, refreshing, because most cozies, there is a love interest like right off the bat. So I liked it. I thought it was good. And speaking of the B&B, the bed and breakfast one. So I was able to read an arc of that. But I read an arc, but I also got the ebook soon as I found out it was available, and I really, really love it. One, because I know the setting, I know the city. It's just beautiful area. So I love the book just because it's set there. But I really like the bed and breakfast background. It's it's very bookish. Yes. So I like that, but it's interesting. I like that. I mean, it's very different flavor from the library, the Blue Ridge Library. So I like that. It's a totally different series. Sometimes their series can seem very similar. You know what I mean? So I like that this one is very different. And I don't want to get into like the plot.
This one is a little more, I would say it's more of a traditional mystery in some ways. I mean, it harks more back to the Agatha Christie kind of mystery where, you know, there's a lot of suspects. I mean, there always are suspects in my books, but it's a little more of it's not as funny, I guess. I mean, it's a little more serious. And I think that's fine, because I think we do need variety. I mean, the cozy genre can encompass so many things, and the great part about it is that, you know, the standard is that you don't have a lot of violence, sex, and swearing and all that kind of stuff, which I don't want to write, so that fits me. But within that, you really have a lot of room to, I think, experiment.
I agree.
You know, because yours has a paranormal aspect. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, like I said, the main character, Alex, discovers that her family are basically, they're descendant from mermaids. And so they have these, but they have lost the ability to shapeshift, but they still have these powers of healing and their ability to command the water. And I've tried to give it a really kind of, try to be very realistic in the way I approach the magic in the story, so that it doesn't, because I actually am not I've never seen Harry Potter, and that's crazy. Like, I'm not like a big magic person, but I believe in magic in our world, and I like the idea that people can do certain things, but I don't want it to be. I like to be very subtle with it. So the characters are really just like regular people living their lives, but they have these abilities and they use them. And there's a character who doesn't want to use it. She thinks there's ethical reasons to not practice magic. And so it's like a fool between one character who loves it and is very enthusiastic about embracing being a water witch, and one who is not very, is her sister, she's a policewoman, kind of a little more no nonsense. And she struggles with like the ethics and morality of making people do things, because they can send thoughts and they can make people do things, and they can read people's thoughts and things like that. So that's kind of a little backstory in that as well, which I like.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, like, how did you get into writing? Because like, as you showed us you've got a lot of books, and I know that you have books that aren't Cozy Mysteries as well. Right. But like, how did you go from did you start your career when you were a librarian, or like after you retired?
I started, when I was a librarian, but it was late. I mean, I've only been writing professionally for, let's say, I have to get my calculator probably to do this. So, we're at 2020, and it was it's only been about 6 or 7 years. Okay. So I started out writing fantasy and science fiction, and I still like that. But I had a few books published with a small press, and then things didn't quite work out. So I pulled my rights, and I do have books published still under Victoria Gilbert that are fantasy, a couple books, but those are under author co-op, so basically self-published, but with an author co-op. And my current agent was the one who got me into Cozy Mysteries, because I was feeling like, I've written these few books and they were published, but then we had issues with the publisher, etc. So I didn't know what to do next. And she said, "What do you like to read?" And I said, "I love to read mysteries." And she said, "Well, then write a mystery." And it was just so simple, but it was her saying that to me that made me realize, I needed to try it. I didn't think I could really do it well. I don't know why. I just didn't feel like I could. And then when I wrote, Murder for the Books, I discovered that I actually do better at writing these than I do other things. So, it was really an experiment. And I started writing the mystery books, and then we got a 3-book deal, and then we've got more books in that series, and then we got the new series. So, it was just, I'd always loved writing, but for some reason I just did it. I didn't try to get published, and I was 58.
This is how most writers start off writing for themselves and just for the love of it. Yeah. When you were creating the Cozy Mystery, was the library idea the first idea, or did you try to have other things that you thought about?
No, it was the first idea, because I had the original idea. I can't really talk much about it because it's spoilers for that book. But something that actually happened that I heard about from a family member spurred me to write that story, or create that story. And then I was thinking about writing a Cozy Mystery, that particular story idea that had been sort of floating around in my head, more of a more serious mystery, or more, thriller kind of thing or something. I thought, well, that would work for that too. And that's kind of where that came from.
So I know that the film rights have been sold for this, which is amazing.
Yeah, but they dropped it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but, that's what happens. People buy the rights, and then it passes on. However, I do have a friend, well, she's a professional screenwriter, TV writer and screenwriter, who loves my books, and out of the blue, she contacted me and said, "Well, I want to do treatment and try to sell it." So who knows what will happen? Okay.
Well, I was really okay. Yeah, no, it's this business. It's like, rights are sold, and then they are returned, and then they're sold again, and that's just kind of the nature of it. So it is years and years. Right. But it's on the radar, so that's good. I would love to see this as a series. I love Cozy Mysteries. Like, I think that they're like the ideal TV show. Like, I'm happy with, I could just watch Cozy Mystery TV like all day long. So, and both of your series are like 2 series that I would love to see.
Thank you. Yours would make a good one, good series too. But I would love, and one of the things I've told people, I said, well, I'd love to see Richard's dances come to life, because I imagine them in my head, but to have a real choreographer
What
does
he look like to you? What does Richard look like to you?
Well, as I
said,
who
would you want to play him too?
Oh gosh, well, there was a dancer who's an actor too, who I can't even remember his name now, but it's hard because I'd want a dancer or somebody who had been trained as a dancer. They don't have to be like, the perfect dancer, because you could have stand-ins for certain parts of it, but they'd have to move like a dancer. That's what I said. They'd have to look like a dancer in their body build, and
right.
But with contemporary, it's a little different. Ballet is very strict, and there's a certain body type in ballet that's very strict most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But in contemporary dance, it's not always the case. So
and they're tall with the shoulders and muscular. I mean, I think you can find someone, maybe like a Broadway, like an actor / dancer.
Yeah, someone who moves well. They just have to move well. I mean, I think. Now the other thing is Amy. I was always worried when I was thinking about them casting her. I thought, oh, they're going to cast somebody who's too skinny, because she's not skinny.
Right.
One of her things in the book is that, she's plump. She's like, rounded.
Right. Pleasantly so, I think.
Gracious. And
right.
And
she's always busting out of her shirt when she's like in the garden.
Yeah.
In her little cutoffs.
Yeah. But I just wanted to have a character who wasn't so, skinny and perfect. And none of my characters are perfect, because I just don't write those kind of characters. I don't relate to them. I just feel like, even Sunny, who is her friend, and she's supposed to be really beautiful and this sort of flower child blonde, but Sunny's this really smart, and she's not the typical, she's not the airhead that, a lot of people depict people.
Right.
Okay. I like to turn things on their head. I like to turn the expectations on their head, I guess.
All right. So let's talk about food, because I know in the bed and breakfast series there is a lot of Southern food. Yeah. Like we have the cook like making all the different dishes with the cast iron pan and things like that. Like I was imagining the different dishes. So talk a little bit about why you made sure to put that in there.
Well, I think at a bed and breakfast in particular, food is a big part of it. And the thing about Chapters, the name of the B&B is Chapters, and that's because it was started by my protagonist's great aunt Isabella, and it's a literary themed B&B, and so they hold these events to celebrate authors and books. And so a lot of the times they're doing, like they mentioned having a jazz thing with F. Scott Fitzgerald books, and they do like these whole week-long things for people who are fans of particular authors.
Which sounds amazing. I would love to go to one.
So in Book for Death, they're celebrating Josephine Tay, who was one of my favorite Golden Age mystery writers, and I brought in some references to her works. And then in the food, there was one banquet, which actually isn't Southern. They're doing a medieval banquet because she wrote a famous book called The Daughter of Time, which is talks about Richard III and the princes in the tower and her inspectors investigating that. I had to do a lot of research on the food stuff for that one, but yeah, the food is important, because I think if you go to an inn, you're expecting, you're going to get specialty breakfast and, like a party with a specialty food. So that was important to add into it. And it's like in your books, the food is, and you've got the apothecary, which is not food, related totally, but you have teas and the herbal remedies, which is really interesting.
Right. So A Spell for Trouble is set in a herbal apothecary. So not traditional recipes, but definitely I mentioned different types of herbal remedies, which can be either like one particular herb or essential oil, or it can be a mixture. And so that's what they sell in the store, is different blends of teas and different tonics and potions and things like that are sourced from herbs and fruits and things like that. But there is also, like I said, it's not a culinary, but lots of Polish food. And the first book in particular, I think, is a focus on like desserts. And for the second one, there's still a lot of desserts, but there's some other other foods as well. And I think initially I wanted this to be a culinary. I was going to have the ladies in a Polish bakery, and culinary cozies were not happening for me at that moment. The publisher asked for something different than culinary, and I was like, I really wanted to do the bakery because I wanted to highlight the dessert. So that's why this book is so heavy in baked goods, because that was my intent.
Sneaking it in there.
Yeah. But now when I think about it, I really can't imagine this not being in an herbal apothecary, because that was my second choice. And I practice, creating herbal remedies myself in my own life for the last 12 years. For just whenever my family members are sick, I will always make something for them first before I go to the drugstore or the doctor, like a cough syrups or just various things like that. But yeah, so I love putting that into the story. That's probably that's the most organic part of the story, because if you ever meet me in person and you cough or you do this, I'm going to recommend
have the remedy
for you. Yeah. Right.
Well, another thing that you have that we both share, I think, is that stories include history. Because one of the things in all of my books, whether it's the Blue Ridge series or the new series, there's a historical component to all of the books. And actually the historical mysteries that are revealed or talked about do connect to the current day mysteries. And for me, that's a really fun part of it. I like doing that. Bringing in something from the past that's affected the people, the family, and yours, obviously, there is that whole heritage of the water witches and so forth.
And I love that in any kind of book. I love there being some sort of a historical mystery that impacts the people currently. So that's one thing that I like about yours, because I do know that you always have that. So, and I don't know. I can read a contemporary cozy that's just there's just a straightforward mystery, but I look for the ones that really kind of go to history, and something has happened, and then it comes back to haunt them. That's my favorite kind of plot. So mine is also very, very heavy on the historical elements. In the second book, the world of the mermaids and the witches and that kind of stuff it becomes richer, because you're just learning more about it and more about the history. So I'm really enjoying writing this one, which is due Friday, the deadline.
I have one due the 17th, so I know what you're talking about.
I have the cover and title. I haven't shared it yet. I'm gonna Drew's musings is gonna show up. I'm really excited. Cricket Lane does great covers. I love your covers. And when I was looking at the bed and breakfast cover, I was like, they even have the North Carolina state flag. I was how detailed is that?
We did. Okay.
Yeah. I was I love it, because if you're in North Carolina, you see a lot of state flags, and so I was like, that's perfect. I thought it was really cute. Sounds good. So,
and I like to bring in the now one little element. Now, not so much in the Book for Death and the B&B series, but in the Blue Ridge series, even though they're not paranormal really, there's a tiny element in every book that makes you question if there's something going on. And to me, that's fun too. It's I'm a skeptic, but I'm also have an open mind. And so I love the exploration of all these things in the world that we can't really explain. And so I like to sneak in that too, is a little bit of—
I noticed that.
Yeah. Do you believe or do you not believe? And you can read it either way. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. I'm trying to make it so that you can read it either way and it works either way. So, gives a little other layer there.
Right. And that's the thing about cozy mysteries, because there are a lot of paranormal cozies, which I didn't even realize until I really got into it. There's cozies with ghosts, there's paranormal with I don't know, there's a lot of ghosts actually. You know, there's talking animals, there's witchcraft, there's a lot. It's like, it's almost like anything can be believable in the world of the cozy. You know what I mean? So, and I like that. And you just go with it. But so with you having a background, you know, as a fantasy writer, do you foresee either bringing in more of those elements or doing a cozy that is like straight on paranormal?
Not paranormal, but I have an idea that, who knows, that would be a fantasy cozy, which I don't think is done very much, because the difference would be it wouldn't be witches or ghosts or anything. It would actually be in a fantasy world, but there would be a group of people who are still investigating crimes, by magical crimes, and they're not magical, but they're investigating magical crimes. And so I'm just kind of rolling this around in my head now, because I love things like Howl's Moving Castle and things like that, where it's a quirky, it's not this really heavy fantasy, you know, not like blood and guts and stuff, but not Game of Thrones or anything like that, you know. I mean, that's
right, not heavy,
you know, but just fun, a fun thing.
Yeah,
with, you know, dragons would be fun. I mean, it would be fun.
Okay, you're gonna like my next book.
So we'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna play with it. I'm just playing around.
Yeah,
I love to play around with stuff, and I think that's the other thing is that, you know, sometimes we get caught up in writing stuff and it's like fitting a certain mold, and I like that, you know, you kind of went outside the lines some in writing yours.
Yeah, I did. And I remember thinking, I was like, I know this is because when it was first pitched, it was mermaid. It was a mermaid cozy. There was no water. There was no witches. The publisher was, and you know, it went the rounds, and everyone was like, "Yeah, we don't know what to do with mermaids." And Crooked Lane was the only one, to their credit, that said, "Can you tone down the mermaids and make them witches?" Literally, and I was like, "Yeah, I can do that," because, you know, after I thought about it, because they were never going to be like walking and not walking around, but they were never going to have fishtails. They were actually just have the DNA. So I thought, you know, what would they look like if they actually were descended from mermaids but lost the ability to shapeshift, and they have these powers? People would think they were witches. I was like, I can do that. I'll make them water witches, like specifically put them by the beach, and the herbal apothecary and the healing. And so I thought, you know, this is fine. Like, I didn't think I was doing something that I didn't want to do, but it was definitely more sci-fi almost, with the original story that I had. And they were like, change all that. Make this fantasy and witchy, because that's what we, you know, that's kind of the category that we're going to put this in.
And, you know, you have to sometimes just like go, well, you know, I have my books I'm writing now. I have the 2 series I'm writing, and I like them and they're fun. I hope that I keep writing more. I mean, I've got more books in the Blue Ridge that'll be coming out, and then the second book that I'm writing now in the B&B series comes out next June. I just found out. So you know, those may go forward too, and you know, it's great to have those. Those are more what I see as bread and butter. And something else, something really different, I would just play with, and if it sold, it sold, and if it didn't, you know.
Right.
That's just, I think writers sometimes need to experiment a little and have fun. You know, do what they want to a certain extent, and understanding that it might not fly in today's market, you know. Yeah.
And that's why when you write for the love of it, like the original motivation is you write because you, like for me, I write the book that I want, that hasn't been written. I write the book I want to read. Like I wanted to read a cozy with mermaids, and so it was tweaked slightly, but it's still ultimately the story.
Right.
Like I'm really, really happy with like the series, like how it is. So I have no complaints about that. And I will say that they're coming around to the mermaids, because I think that they were really like the publishers were probably thinking no one wants to read this book about mermaids, but it's been well received, you know, just the concept, like who doesn't like mermaids, you know what I mean? So I think I'm excited that people seem to like the idea. Yeah.
And that you can push it maybe a little forward as you go forward. You can bring a little more of it into it because
well, there's more, right? And so book 2 is surrounds the planning of a mermaid festival during the summer. It's July, and there's the annual mermaid festival. But they actually have a mermaid fountain on the cover. So I'm like, they're getting okay with the idea. So I'm really there's a fountain in the story in the park, so they put that out there, which was a total surprise to me because I told them to do. I was like, the murder happens in this place, and so you probably want to do the cover in this place. And the artist who's amazing did something totally different, which I loved. I was like, yes, I love this. So what you got? I see an arc.
I haven't seen the art yet for book 2 of this one, but it's coming. And that one does have, it's called Reserved for Murders. That's the title, the second book.
That's book 2?
Yeah, Reserved for Murder, yeah.
I want it. I want to read it.
and the one thing I brought into these, in the Blue Ridge, I brought in more arts and some a touch of paranormal and some dance and things like that. But in these books, I'm bringing in something a little different. There's a touch of one of my favorite genres, which I'll just say is like espionage type stuff. So that's fun because
I love that genre too.
So just try to work in things that interest you, and if you can do it and get it published, I think it's wonderful.
Can I see the cover again for book 2?
No, this is book for. I don't have book 2 yet.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's the one. I thought you already had book 2. I was gonna say, wait.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, that's I like that, and it's like the little dog, and that's the neighbor's dog, I think, right?
Neighbor's dog, yeah, little Yorkie. I had a Yorkie at one time, so I decided, well, let's do a Yorkie, because it even calls him what we used to call our dog, which was the Holy Terrier, because they're a terrier. So
I'm gonna see. I know that we're gonna stop and do questions.
Yeah,
I don't see any in the little question box, but I do see on the side. Let's see. Someone asked about what is the hardest. Jamie Southern says, "What is the hardest part of writing a mystery?" What's the hardest part of writing a mystery?
Well, I don't know about for everyone else, but for me, it's you really can't. There's a different. You'll hear people say they're pantsers or plotters.
Mm-hmm. Which are you?
And that means, do you plot a lot? Do you outline a lot? Or do you just kind of wing it? Well, I don't know. Maybe some genius out there can wing it with a mystery, but personally, I have to plot it very heavily because to get those clues in there and work them in, and sometimes even, when you turn the book in, the editor goes, "Oh, maybe you should fix that part." I don't always do it perfectly, let's just say that, but it's very difficult. You want to make it clear so you're not surprising the reader at the end, like there's no clues, like they didn't have anything to work off of, to deduct, the deduction. But yet you don't want to like put a big spotlight over somebody's head. There's the suspect, here they are. So it's tricky. Yeah. That to me is tricky.
I think like writing a mystery, like plotting it out. I mean, it's like the actual plotting is very technical. Like you have to like place the clues in certain places, and you have to have the red herrings. And so, I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know how you get past that. It would be a mess. Like you get to the end and you be like, I don't know what happens. So I'm the same. I plot, like I do a very detailed, like for the second book I have, like it ended up being 50 pages. It's very long, detailed outline of like in narrative form, the entire story, which you can refer to, which is wonderful. Of course, sometimes it deviates from it, but I kind of like write the stories. The only thing I don't do, I don't know who the murderer is at the end, which it's just interesting. Like I know who like the main, like say 3 suspects are going to be, and I give them all compelling reasons to be the murderer, and they have the opportunity and the means. And then at the end, I kind of it comes, one of them is like, I did it. And like, oh, I thought this one did it. You know, I always have an idea of who I think it's going to be. And I may kind of tend towards them in the writing, but then I always switch it because I don't want there to be like a subconscious like trail that I left. Yeah. So I always switch it from what I thought it was, I guess.
Somebody's asked, do you create profiles as a reference for your characters? Keep yourself honest. Mm.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't do a profile as such. I definitely like, so when I create, like when I first do like the outline I was mentioning, I do like a paragraph, like this is what this person looks like and this is where they're from. And I may do like a brief, but I kind of just keep it in my head. Maybe I should do that, like add things. Like this is the food. Like at this, like I'm listening to the audiobook for book 1 to make sure that I'm not missing anything or I haven't forgotten anything that I put in. But
I don't do real detailed profiles either. It's funny to me. I don't mean to make this sound mystical because it isn't. But the characters, as I develop them, they sort of become real in my head, and it's almost like I could describe what I know about you, or I mean, you know, I don't know you totally well yet, you know,
right?
But that's the way I feel with the characters, is that I see them, and a lot of times I see the scenes playing out in my head, which can be really funny if I'm trying to work something out and walk in the room and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm
right,
like,
you're talking and moving, doing action.
Actually, do that.
Yeah, I do that.
You know, but the characters to me, there's like this. It's kind of hard to describe, you know, like what I feel about them. I feel like they become, as I develop them,
I know what you mean.
that I know just as well as somebody I know in real life.
Yeah, that's the same for me. Like I have a general idea of who they are, but like when I put them in a scene, it's like they do, you know, it sounds so cliche, the characters write themselves, you know, but it's like, for example, like they do, like I know what their general personality is like, but I put them in a situation and they do what a person in that situation would do. Like it just kind of, you know what I mean? It's like, it just comes to me, okay, this is what they would do. Or this is the kind of music they would be listening to, or this is the coffee that this, like, you know, like the detective Jack, he goes into the coffee shop, and I didn't think about like, well, what am I going to have him drink? He ordered black coffee because that's the kind of person that he is. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, that's him. That's him. And I think, you know, sometimes then they turn on you. Well, I mean, or they demand to do something, you know, like I've written scenes where I'll try to get them to do something because it fits the plot. And and I'll go, oh no, I'm gonna have to work the plot around because she would never do that, or he would never say that, or, you know, it just becomes very much that you realize kind of this full rounded person. And you know, the funny part, like with the one character I said that I love so much in the Blue Ridge series, who's Kurt Kendrick, who's this art dealer. He's in his 70s. I picture him now. He's the only one that I have an actor that I would want to play him for sure.
Is it Sean Connery?
No, Ted Danson would be perfect.
Yeah.
Ted Danson is actually in the right age, and he looks great, which Kurt is supposed to look great. And he's charming, but yet he has that little bit of, he can play the kind of.
And he played a demon.
Yeah. And so that's kind of really. Yeah. And I just see him, and you know, he just is him. He's gonna do his thing.
I'm not gonna be able to unsee him now when I read the book.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Ted Danson. So I can see that. Definitely the hair, right? The full head of silver
white hair, and yeah.
So hey Ashley. Are you able to be heard? Because I think you're on mute. Are you on mute?
There you go. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Yes, I wanted to jump in because I feel like there's some questions that are being asked. I'm not sure that you can see.
Okay.
But perfect segue from what you said, Victoria. Someone wants to know, Esme, who would play Alex Daniels if the book was made into a movie or a TV show?
Right. I don't know. I actually did a thing on Twitter where I posted pictures. I found pictures of like what I thought the characters looked like. And I actually found a Miss Poland, like I can't remember the year. I think it was like 2018 or 19. And she was the closest that I could find, but I can't think of an actress offhand, but she's, you know, she's got long black hair, green eyes. She's pretty. She's 27. And I think there could be a lot of different choices for that. I would have to, I can't think of who it would be.
I have a hard time with actors because I think maybe also coming from an acting theater film background, I know that, you know, a lot of times the people you think would be great at something aren't the best match. So whenever people ask me that, I go, I don't know. I don't know.
I have one. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like that's a question that authors often get asked, and it's very rare for someone to say, "Oh, yes, I had this person in mind."
Yeah, I think it would be detrimental to have a person in mind when you're creating the character, because that actor's mannerisms or the way they act in a story can kind of take over the character. So you kind of just keep it in your brain, like the way you think they are. But yeah, I think like if I would love to be, if this became my show, it became a TV show or something, I would love to be part of the casting process. But I could definitely look at a person and say, no. Yeah. But I don't know I could just like think of anybody. There's nobody I can think of off the top of my head that would be perfect.
We had another viewer ask if you could further define what is a cozy.
Right. We should have done that in the beginning, I guess. They've been confused this whole time. I'm sorry.
Well, we mentioned some parts of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the traditional. So a cozy, I think the shortest way to answer that, it's like Murder, She Wrote. The long answer is that, you know, there's always a amateur sleuth. They usually own a business or they have a hobby that's like the central like hook of the book. That rhymes. And it's set like in a small, cozy community, very small knit community where everyone knows everyone, which kind of helps with like solving murders because you have to go around talking to people and interact with everybody. And then like Victoria said earlier, there's no profanity or very little, nothing graphic. A lot of times the murder happens off the page and you just kind of discover the body. And nothing graphic, like romantic wise. There's either like a kiss or something. So it's like a very kind of, I don't know. And even like Agatha Christie's books, I mean, stories were like that. I mean, that of course that was of the time, but it's just like if there's an amateur sleuth, even though like Hercule Poirot he was an actual inspector.
Yeah.
But it's usually like someone who has no business solving murders. They should be at their business they own, you know, whether it's like a bakery or a pet grooming business or a bookstore, but they stumble upon something and they have a stake in it and they have to figure out what happens. Yeah. I'll let
Sometimes
you finish.
It's because, you know, somebody is a suspect, it's their family or friend, and there's usually a tie-in in some way that it's always either them or a friend or a loved one or something like that brings them into the mystery.
Yeah. And I like cozies because, well, for me, I always like the settings, and I like reading cozies that are in places that I like to visit, or like I love reading cozies set in North Carolina, Virginia, and I like cozies at the beach, cozies in the mountains. Like those are my go-tos. And then like I love to learn about new cultures. I like to learn, like have a book club, and we just read Mimi Lee Gets a Clue, and the main character is Chinese American, tons of Chinese food, is set in a pet grooming business. And so it's like a fun way to learn about pet grooming, but to learn about like the characters' hobbies and different occupations. There's one author, Harper Kincaid, she's got the bookbinding mystery series, and it's like you learn about bookbinding. And it's
winemaking. There's everything, you know. I mean, there's all these different occupations, and you sort of weave that in. And I think a lot of people enjoy reading, as you say, because they get to either travel to a place or learn about some kind of, you know, craft or a occupation that they don't necessarily know
Yeah, like, and I won't read something if I don't like the setting or I don't like the. I mean, I'm a little more open to the theme or the craft or the business, but it has to be something that I really want to learn more about, or the food. Like I really like want to eat food, like certain kinds of food, and I can't. I'll just read about it. There's something. Live vicariously through the characters in the book.
Yeah. And a lot of times cozies include animals, pets. That's a big thing too. Even if they're not like a pet-based mystery, but they'll include their pets because.
Yeah, I didn't have a pet in mind because I'm not really, like I don't read cozies for that, but I have come to like to love pets and cozies because they are in there. But like I didn't have one at first, and then I was asked to put one in, and so we had a German Shepherd when we were like when our kids were younger, and if we ever get another dog, it would be a German Shepherd. So I put in a German Shepherd, and now like I want to get one again because of the one I'm writing into the book.
Yeah.
So, who are your favorite mystery writers, and would you want to meet them?
Oh gosh. Well, I get to meet some of them when I'm doing these things. Contemporary people. Now, I have to admit that I love, and they're not cozies. One of my favorites, way back when, I loved Mary Stewart's romantic suspense novels, and I have a suspicion they influenced my writing quite a bit. Also, I love Ruth Rendell, who also wrote as Barbara Vine. She does these wonderful psychological, and she's passed. So, you know, I'm an eclectic reader. I just read everything. And if it's well written, I'm going to read it and like it. So it's hard for me because I get asked this question a lot, and I think, I don't know. I mean, one of my favorite writers, John Crowley, writes fantasy, very intellectual fantasy, but it's really brilliant. And so, you know, it's hard. I can't just narrow down. That's the librarian in me, I guess.
Yeah, it's a hard question. I know if I narrow it down to cozy mysteries, Ellen Crosby is probably my favorite. She's like one of the first mystery authors that I read. Really kind of influenced me to want to write mysteries as well. And who else? I'm a very eclectic reader as well. Like I read, it just depends. I read nonfiction. I just finished reading Mexican Gothic, which is great. And I'm currently listening to The Witching Year, or The Year of the Witching, I think it's called, with Alexis Henderson. It's kind of like Handmaid's Tale-ish, Handmaid's Tale kind of. It's really good. And I like Chris Pavoni. I like thrillers. I like espionage. I like military thrillers, like Vince Flynn's, Tom Clancy. I have a lot of
John Le Carre. I love John Le Carre. And I actually just read a book though. It's totally, you know, off the wall. It's The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. And it's a fantasy, but it's just, I read it in one day. I mean, I was like mesmerized by this book. And it's just, you know, that just happens. You know, you read a book and you're like, I just fell in love. So it's hard to know what that book's going to be.
Yeah. Also, like Isabella Allende, Alice Hoffman, Sarah Addison Allen, like those kind of magical realism, like women's fiction authors. I like those. I think if I were to do another genre, it would be something similar to that. I really like those a lot.
I think you're being able to do that too.
Yeah, thank you. That would be great. Yeah.
Well, ladies, we are at the end of our hour.
Perfect.
If anyone has any other questions, you can pop it into the chat box. But otherwise, if you have not yet purchased a book, here is the link again to our event page. Victoria, I want to say thank you for writing a book that includes a male dancer as the mother of a male dancer. I appreciate that kind of inclusion. And Esme, it's funny to me that every time you speak of your book, you bring up the mermaids, because it's the apothecary that was the hook of the book for me.
Yeah, well, that is the main hook. Yeah, that's the main thing of the book. And when I first when I came up with the idea, I gave the publisher a list of titles, and they were all based on like herbal like themes. And they were the ones who were like, no, we're gonna do like go with the witch. I was like, really? That's not even the biggest part of the book, but you know, but yeah, no, I don't think I talked a lot about the herbal apothecary, but it's a big part of the book, and one of my favorite elements as well.
Yeah, and I recommend her book highly. So
yeah, and I recommend all of her.
It's out now, and the newest one comes out August 11th. So
and it's really good.
You can pre-order, and it will be in your hands. And my other books that are out, of course, Bookmarks has those too.
Right.
And I can get them for you, or can get them for you, and whatever. And I think both of us have them in audiobook too. That's something to mention, that Crooked Lane's great about getting audiobook deals. And so if you enjoy audiobooks, you can also get audiobooks.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you need assistance figuring out how to do that, Bookmarks can help you with that as well. So thank you so much. And you have kicked off our Murder and Margaritas series in the best possible way. So we thank you so much.
And I finished mine.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it definitely, and it's always good to talk with Esme.
Thanks, likewise. I'm sure we'll see each other soon someplace.
Oh yeah, one of these days in person when this blows over a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you to all the readers. Thank you to readers who joined us tonight, and you know, writers aren't anything without readers, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.